Hello everyone, welcome to guided notes number 2 on a refresher on simplifying and working with complex numbers. You may remember that a complex number comes in the form of a plus bi, where a is an integer and b is an imaginary number. The imaginary unit is the square root of -1, and that is equal to I. Remember that because we can't take the square root of a negative, but we will end up with negative numbers, we need to have a way to manage that. That is called an imaginary number, denoted by that unit I. It is a constant that represents a value, just like pi is a constant that represents a value. Okay. Onward. I don't think we need to write in pink. Let's go blue. Okay. So, for example, if I am asked to take the square root of a negative number, there we go, then what I need to do is recognize that it's really the square root of -1 times the square root of 5. That square root of -1 can be simplified to I, just like with any radical. Anything that can be simplified comes outside of the radicand, and what can't be simplified gets left inside. And that is how you would take the square root of -5. It would be I square roots of 5. Now, there are more things to do here. For example, if you have an operation like I times the square root of 5 quantity squared, what we're looking at here is really I square roots of 5 times I square roots of 5. So I times I is I squared, and 5 times 5 is 25. That's the square root of 25. And so what you end up with is I squared times 5, or 5i squared. But remember that I squared is really the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. And when you do that, you end up with -1. Because you're taking the square root times the square root, those would cancel, and you just get -1 times 5, and you end up with an answer of -5. Now, I realize that this is probably very fast. I'm talking fast on purpose so that you'll have to listen and really pay attention. But what I want you to do, if you need to slow down, is watch it slower, watch it again, pause it, or if you need another explanation, find an outside source. Khan Academy, find an outside source, a video on YouTube, photomath it, take a picture, but make sure that you understand that ultimately you are responsible for learning the material. Learn it any way you see fit, but you may not claim the work as your own until you can actually do it and show me on your own. Okay, next in this example, a little note here, we're going to treat I like any other variable when we're performing an operation, but I always need to simplify I squared. So for example, let's go down here. Let's look at some of these. Let's look at 11. I can see that there are some i's in this problem. The imaginary unit is in this problem, but I'm going to treat it like any other problem where there's a variable. So I'm going to distribute. That would be -12 plus 48i plus 15 plus 21i. Now I'm combining like terms. I've got a -12 plus 15. That means I have 15, and I owe 12. That means I still will have 3 left. And I've got 48i plus 21i. That ends up to be 69i, I believe. So 3 plus 69i, and you can leave it like that. At the very back of this packet, you've probably realized that there are answers, but not solutions. So if you have a question about how a problem gets worked out, you can message me, or again, you can photomath it or type it into some search engine and find the solution. But again, you are responsible for your own learning. You need to own it. You need to make sure that you can do it, and if you can't, that you reach out to me or someone for help until you can. Okay, the last one is to rationalize. Well, just like how we rationalized with radicals, we're going to rationalize a denominator with an imaginary unit, because remember, this is really like having the square root of -5, and I can't have a radical sign in the denominator. So what you need to do is multiply by, you guessed it, 5i. Or maybe you didn't guess it. But what I do to the bottom, I have to do the top. So then I'm also going to multiply the top by 5i to keep this fraction equivalent. So distribution, that was 5i plus 30i squared. This is a situation with I squared where I have to make sure that I simplify. Let's go pink here. So I have to make sure that I simplify that I squared. Okay. And now 5i times 5i, that's 25i squared. Remember that I squared simplifies to -1. So I've got -25 in the denominator and minus 30 here and 5i. Now I can certainly have an imaginary unit in the numerator. That is within bounds. And now I simplify this. I see that I can factor out a 5 and get I minus 6 on top, and I can factor out a 5 in the denominator, and 25, and I can divide by 5, and when I do that I get 5, and I get I minus 6 over 5. Okay, that concludes this video. Stay tuned for the next one where we review some geometry.